More Porsche woes here in the Car Wizard shop. The customer just bought this and it's already broke. Let's take a look. This is a 2015 Porsche Panamera GTS. There is several dealerships in Wichita that we work with that they get these expensive cars, whether it be Jaguar, Land Rovers, Porsches, any kind of car at that level. They don't even want their techs to look at it. They're like, you guys put your wrenches down, we're taking this to Omega and get it sorted. One of those dealerships just sold this car to this customer in the middle of last month. And it's already broken. Let's move to the back of the car and talk about it. So we currently have it on wood blocks so that we could actually get the lift arms underneath of it. But as you can see, the rear suspension is flat as a pancake. Now this is no fault of the dealership, this is no fault of the customer, there's really nobody at fault. It just failed. Mrs. Wizard and I, over the years, have owned several vehicles with air suspension on them. And they're usually part of the suspension that's included with a higher level or upper level car. And although those suspensions can ride like $1,000,000, and they're usually part of a car that looks like $1,000,000 or makes you look like $1,000,000, whenever you're going through the Starbucks drive-thru and this happens, you look like $0. I guarantee you, you're not cool anymore. So that's kind of the pitfall of air suspension. It's awesome until it breaks, and then you have this. There's actually a 2003 or 4 Range Rover in town that's for sale. It's sitting outside of someone's house, and it's completely flat. And they actually have an ad where it's for sale, and they're like, we don't even know what to do. The suspension is flat, and we're not even going to dig into it because it's going to cost more than the vehicle's worth to even fix it. You see this a lot on Facebook Marketplace. You used to see it on Craigslist before Craigslist went by the wayside. But you can find Range Rovers, Panameras, Jaguars, all kinds of cars flat. The suspension is flat. It's because, especially when I seen this car pull up on the tow truck, or if you see any of these cars for sale that are flat like that, I already know it's not going to be $50 to fix it. It's probably going to be $1,500 or $4,500. We'll get this thing up in the air as soon as we take a look at it and look around it, and we'll show you what blew out on it. There's actually a little bit bigger story than just what's blown out. So let's go ahead and take a look around this car. We'll open the hood and we'll let Mrs. Wizard give you a tour of the interior. So as you can see, the customer's been driving this car. It's got water spots on it from being driven in the rain. That's to be expected if the customer was out driving and enjoying his new purchase and disaster struck. But these cars are actually very beautiful. Some people say the back end is not very pretty on these, but I actually think they're okay. This has aftermarket wheels on it. They are Rohana wheels, and they are 22-inch wheels. You can see on the lower part of the door it says GTS. That denotes the package that this Panamera has. There's our flat suspension. It's a 4-door car and it has a hatchback that it can open. I'll show you guys that here. We currently have some things apart where we were testing the air suspension, but you can see there's our battery, there's our Bose subwoofer, and fuses, and relays for the air suspension. One thing you have to be careful of when you work on multiple different makes and models of cars is that you don't start thinking like 1982 where you slam the trunk, slam the hood, you slam everything. No. You don't do that on the newer vehicles. You push a button. Simple. Another thing the customer wants looked at, this is nothing to do with the dealership, this is actually the customer's going to pay for this portion, is this. He'd like to take this fuel filler lid here and see if we can get it repaired or replaced. We're going to get a price together on that. I'm not sure what happened here. At some point it was open and somebody rested on it or knocked it. I'm not sure what happened. It still works, just kind of not par for the course on a Porsche. It does have, I believe, some sort of a wrap on the roof, or the roof, and also the hood. As we come back around to the front, you can see this thing's not damaged or scratched or beat up. It just has some suspension problems. Let's go ahead and open the hood. Here's our GTS 4.8 V8. Has 440 horsepower, 384 pound-feet of torque. And there's our no muffler Newton. You can hear the grain truck or whatever that is going by. This does 0 to 60 in 4.4 seconds. It's not turbocharged, it's not supercharged, it's naturally aspirated. It's quite a bit of power out of a 4.8. Quite impressive. Being that this is an Audi Volkswagen owned company, you can find the ignition coils are Audi looking red coils. I can tell this one's been replaced at some point or mismatched or whatnot, but probably one died at some point. These engines aren't too bad to work on. We've done valve cover gaskets on them. We've done various different services and repairs, and they're not horrible. But the oil pump is electronically controlled, and I have worked on a couple before where that was a major engine out teardown to replace that, and I sent that off to the dealership. That is not what we do here. We don't tear engines down to their core components. We don't do that here. So unfortunately, we couldn't help those couple of customers. But other than that, they're actually not too bad to work on. Let's go ahead and let Mrs. Wizard show you around in the interior. It's actually very nice in the interior.
Well, here we go, ladies and gents. It has 52,000, okay, really 53,000 miles on this thing. This thing is looking really nice. Obviously, with that few of miles on this guy, he's in great condition. The dash is fabulous, and it does have the red leather interior. This is getting to be kind of popular. Obviously, we've seen this in my Levante, and now that we're seeing it in here as well. It does have a lot of carbon fiber accents on the dash and on the center console. We do see here's our shifter. Lots of buttons here to choose from. Lots to control seats and how our driving package is. Obviously, this little button has got a few issues at the moment. As we look at the seats, nice red leather interior with, nice bolster on the sides. They're pretty comfortable. And being that it is a four-door, there is the back seat with a center console area as well. So this is a four-seater, not a five-seater. Nobody's sitting on the hump in the back seat. It does have a dark gray Alcantara headliner. Is looking great. One thing that's kind of interesting is those are not LED bulbs, being that they are kind of got that yellow tinting to them. So that's kind of interesting. And again, tons more buttons, which is kind of the Porsche kind of thing to do. So obviously with all of these buttons on here, you can tell Porsche owners like to push buttons. Maybe not just the buttons in the car, but to have people around them as well. As we end up the steering wheel, this is kind of a small steering wheel. Not as big as some of the others we have seen, but again, it does have the lovely Porsche emblem on the center. I'm eager to see what it looks like underneath. Let's get this up in the air, Wizard.
So it's not uncommon on these cars, especially ones that ride a little bit lower, to have scrapes. I think this is called the valance here, that parking stalls or curbs or things that get scraped up. So that doesn't surprise me. There does seem to be maybe a panel here missing, and there you can see a nice little scrape there. I don't have my little pin light with me, so we'll use this big one today. This is kind of scary to me on these cars, is that the radiator is right here. So if you hit something in the road, boom, you're out of service. You're done. Coolant all over the place. But that's the price to pay to have a car that performs like this. Here's our big electric fan. No leaks going on there. Here's our oil pan. It looks like it's recently been serviced and they just didn't get either a new copper washer or something on there. We'll take care of that while it's here. Here's our AC compressor. A little bit of wetness going on there. Here's our motor mounts. They look to be in decent shape. This is all-wheel drive, so you can see the CV shaft right there. There's also one on the other side, right through here. It goes out to the wheel. Let's go ahead and check the wheels. The brakes are about half gone, but they're still good. Nothing loose there. Here we can see the front right air strut. It's still got air in it. It's nice and inflated. So that one's good to go. Nothing leaking out of it. Let's check the other side. Brakes are half gone there. Nothing loose. There's our little boot hanging down right there. We'll see if we can get that reattached, but it's also inflated. In good shape. Nothing leaking there. Here's our CV shafts. The boots look good. Steering rack is nice and dry. Here's our transmission. Nice and dry. Everything looking good there. Exhaust. There's a little transfer case right here, and you can see the drive shaft. It's right here that goes to the front. It's a little black drive shaft. It's amazing that they can fit all that in such a small area. Everything looks good there. Our cats aren't rattling. They're not meowing either. This appears to me to be aftermarket exhaust, like the resonators or something are gone, and this pipe's in place. That doesn't look like Porsche stuff to me. Move on down to here. Here's our differential, nice and dry. CV boots are not slinging grease. They do have a tiny bit of seepage coming out of them. You can see like a little buildup, but that's really nothing to warrant tearing it down or replacing it yet. Check the brakes on this side. They're half gone. Nothing loose. Our airbag here is good. Sway bar link is good. We'll move to this side. Brakes are half gone. Nothing loose. You can see our airbag is gone. And the reason for that is it's blown. We removed it. Here's our ride height sensor. Luckily nothing was damaged there. Our sway bar link is good. Let me go grab the airbag that collapsed on this. It's an accordion, Mrs. Wizard.
Ooh, let's not quit your day job for that one.
Okay. So here's our blown out air spring. This is not an air strut or an air shock. This is not the shock absorber. It's just the spring, the air spring. This one is blown out. Obviously we removed it, but then Magic Mike, as he removed it and brought it over to me, he said, "Car Wizard, something's not adding up here." And I was like, "What do you mean it's blown out?" And he has a really good eye. He caught this. He said, "This is an aftermarket air spring." And I said, "Well, how do you know that?" He said, "There's supposed to be metal right here." Let's take a look at the one that's currently on there and holding air. So I'll move this boot up and you'll see metal. You can see the metal there. There's a metal ring. This one's holding air very well. So this spring is stock. It's still holding air. It's doing fine. Let's go back to our blown out one. Here's our old one. As you can see, there's no metal anywhere in here. I told Magic Mike either this is aftermarket or the ring fell off and went away after this blew out and collapsed and completely. It was actually dislodged out of the control arm and just kind of crumpled. There's definitely something going on here. I believe it probably is aftermarket. It's been replaced in the past with a substandard air spring, and it didn't last very long. So did they save any money? Nope. They sure didn't. So what causes these things to fail is the constant moving back and forth and hitting bumps, and the rubber finally gets cracks in it and it bursts and then it leaks all the air out. And in the case of the old one that blew out on here, it could be substandard material they used. It didn't last very long. Maybe it was too thin, the thickness of it, and it just blew out. One thing to think about on these air suspension systems on any vehicle is, especially at the dealership, they're going to want to replace the entire system if you start having airbags go out. And I don't blame them. Really, it's a service item. You should replace all the airbags all at once. Just as you saw, it's very embarrassing when one of them blows out, because when one blows out, usually the system tries to adapt and match that level on all four wheels so it's not unsafe to drive. You don't want your car like this going down the road. You won't even be able to steer correctly. So the computer will make all the suspension flat so that at least you can get home. So the question gets asked, why would someone put a cheap part on such a nice car? It could be availability. They couldn't get a hold of a quality OEM Porsche part, or it could be they just didn't want to spend the money and they think, I'll save a little money and get the cheaper one, but as you can see, it really wasn't a wise choice. With air suspension components, you don't cheap out because it will leave you stranded again. And typically at a dealership, they will have you replace the whole system because they don't want to deal with the domino effect. One of them blew out. There will be another one and another one. If all four blow out over the course of a year, that's 4 tow bills. And the customer can be like, why didn't we take care of this? Well, it's because you didn't want to replace all 4. You said the other 2 or 3 are still good. They weren't good. They're all getting towards the end of their life. If you see something like this on Marketplace and you're a do-it-yourselfer, it's very possible that you can replace the air springs or the compressor or whatever that could be wrong with the system and get it back going again. But it's not just as simple as a few air springs and a compressor. There's a reservoir, there's valve blocks, there's ride height sensors, there's all kinds of things that can go wrong on these cars. And if you're not trained and you don't know exactly how these systems work, you could spend thousands of dollars and your system still won't air up. So make sure you don't dive in too deep into something like this and you're not understanding what's going on. It can be very expensive. Air suspension is not something that you do the shotgun approach, the parts cannon as it's called. Let's try an air spring. Let's try a valve block. You really need to dig in and find out with codes and also checking for air leaks with the scan tool and say, what exactly is wrong here? Then you find out what's wrong and you take care of that problem. Then you can start addressing, do you want to take it any further and do preventative maintenance on them? Or does the customer just want to risk it and wait till the next time another one blows? Usually people wait till the next one blows because it's so expensive. You can go a long time, a year or two before the next one blows. Or it could be a week or two. You just don't know. It's kind of a gamble. It's kind of a risk. This is one of the times you want to use an OEM or high quality part. You don't want to skimp out and put a cheap one on because this happens. We have an OEM part ordered, and as soon as it arrives, we'll get it reinstalled and we'll get this thing back on the road. We've tested the compressor. It puts out the right amount of pressure through the reservoir in the right amount of time. Everything's working. It just has a blown air spring on the driver's rear.
Hey, Car Wizard, do you think that the different wheels had anything to do with it?
No, the wheels and tires are not going to determine whether or not your air spring is going to last or not. That has really nothing to do with it. So that wouldn't be a considering factor when trying to figure out what happened here.
Could they have hit something?
I imagine if you were to hit something large in the road and it was such a jar to the system that it could blow an airbag, I could see that happening. It's possible that's what happened here. Very likely the aftermarket airbag gave out because it's subpar materials. Let's go ahead and get this thing on the ground. Now when Mrs. Wizard did the interior tour, she showed you guys the vehicle raise and lower button. There's also a little shock icon button right next to it. Those two are used to place this vehicle in jack mode. So if you're going to lift it or replace a tire on the side of the road, you need to put it in jack mode so you don't freak out the suspension system. But that's not a problem here because the system's already freaked out. It was brought here on a tow truck completely flat. The system is got error codes on top of error codes. It's already shut itself down. So putting it into jack mode is not a big deal right now. But once we get the air spring replaced, then we'll clear the codes and it will bring itself back alive. Then we will need to start using jack mode for sure. So definitely want to show you guys a scenario where these air suspension cars can have a collapse like this. They go flat. Not only is it embarrassing, but if you're in the market for one, you think, well, I'll find one that is collapsed and I'll save a little money. You might, but it's a 50-50 gamble. You could also lose your rear end in it. You could find out that so many things are wrong. They drove it around flat like that for so long. They broke the ride height sensors, or it's really a gamble. So be careful with that. If you're curious what kind of tools we're going to use to fix this Panamera, check my Amazon affiliates link in the description below. We get a small cut and we really appreciate it. And make sure to hit the subscribe button because there are so many more cool cars to come and projects and all kinds of things going on in the shop. Thanks for watching.